Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Bryony Livesey. Bryony is the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge Director for Innovate UK, which is the UK part of the, I guess, National Innovation Agency, and has been heavily involved, obviously, as you can tell from the sort of decarbonisation involved in helping allocate grants and help this first wave of industrial decarbonisation projects, which are hopefully beginning to spread across the UK. So welcome, Dr. Livesey. Thanks for joining me. You're going to be speaking at a forthcoming World Hydrogen UK event on the 9th and 10th of April, I think, in London. So it'd be great to sort of catch up and understand, I guess, your activities and sort of give us an overview of some of the work that you've been doing in this, I guess, the birth of hydrogen in the UK.
Thank you. Well, we kicked off our program late in 2019 and we're due to finish on time in 2024. So I think our primary goal has been to decarbonise the UK's major industrial clusters. So we've got big clusters in South Wales, the North West, Scotland, Teesside and Humberside, all of which are major hubs of industry in the UK. And decarbonising these regions is crucially important to decarbonising UK industry and getting us to net zero. So each region is focusing on the infrastructure it's going to need for the future. And a lot of that is around carbon capture and storage, but crucially, hydrogen has been seen by industry as making an important contribution for the future. So each region also has important hydrogen projects in it as well.
Excellent. And what sort of, is there any sort of specific, I guess, initial roles in terms of helping the development of the projects in the early phase of, I guess, development and understanding some grants awarded?
Yeah, you make it sound like we just award grants, but of course it's done through a highly competitive process.
Yeah.
So what we had to do was really work hard to understand what was actually needed in the UK at this point, because the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge itself is £210 million of public money, which is more than matched by industry, so about £500 million of the work. And we really had to get this right, because if we wasted this investment, we had no platform to build on for the future. So we worked really hard to understand what was needed and to work with industries to help them to understand what an industrial cluster was supposed to look like. So we were not looking to just decarbonise a single industry, but we're really looking to develop the industry for the whole region. And so we had to be confident that the cluster itself encompassed a range of industries. So, if you're planning to produce hydrogen, we need to be sure that there's industries there that plan to use that hydrogen, for example. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
So, we've done that work and through the competition process, help the clusters to really understand what a good cluster would look like and, build the right partnerships so that, they could be successful in their funding application.
What characteristics would define a good cluster? I mean, obviously, yeah, production and offtake, and is it being close together? I mean, in terms of.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because all the clusters are so different. So in
Mhm.
Teesside, all the industries within about 5 miles of each other, and they've all worked together. They've got common infrastructure in parts, and it's a different arrangement than if you look at, for example, South Wales, where the cluster is spread along the whole south coast of Wales. So, hundreds of miles of different industries ranging from steel right through to power production. So we wouldn't characterize a cluster as having a sort of single characteristic. What we would say is it would need to have more than one industry in it, and it needs to be of sufficient scale that decarbonising that region has a material impact on UK decarbonisation. But then beyond that, we're looking for ways of working. So we want to have a really collaborative approach amongst the industries working in the cluster. So traditionally, an industry would kind of, decide to build a big project, and they would, go through planning and they build that project. But that's not what we're looking for at all, because we need to get the infrastructure right for the whole region. And so it's not good enough to just have one big industry connected, for example, to offshore carbon dioxide storage, because how do you get the pipelines the right size to help other people? And so we're really looking for industries that are willing to reach out to other industries to make sure that the infrastructure did meet local needs as much as possible. And that's obviously a much more cost-effective way of decarbonising these regions. And so we're looking for people who are, interested in what they contribute to the region, that they're not just bringing a big project, they're thinking about how they develop skills in the region, how they collaborate, share knowledge around themselves, and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, yes, the skills development is yeah, super interesting in terms of I guess the length of time and the challenge that sort of that lies in front of us in terms of sort of decarbonising the whole energy system and in the industrial sector over the next 20 to 30 years. In terms of the actual process, there was the net zero hydrogen fund as well, and that I think from speaking beforehand is about to announce the award winners or the is that correct?
Yes, some award winners have been announced from the first round already, and then the second round I'm hoping will be announced fairly soon, so that will be good to see.
Yeah. And in terms of the sort of sectors, obviously we haven't announced all of the awards. What are some of the sort of the initial industrial sectors? When people think of industrial, I guess they think of the heavier industries in terms of steel and but yeah, I understand some of the lighter industries are also looking at using hydrogen to decarbonize their operations.
Yeah, there's a really good range from heavy industry wanting to use the hydrogen instead of natural gas in heating processes, right through to glass manufacturers, which of course massive production centres, but with real interest in developing decarbonised glass for various food and drink operations, because this is what customers increasingly want.
Mm-hmm.
And then the food manufacturers themselves are increasingly involved in looking at hydrogen for various food processes that require heat. So huge range. We naturally think about transport decarbonisation, heavy trucks, a lot of interest in that as well.
So, and also, of course, not to forget low carbon malt whiskey, one of my favorite industries. And in terms of what happens now, what are your thoughts? And we're going to begin to see the rise of these projects. I guess maybe the public aren't fully aware. What are your thoughts around the impact as we go forward?
Well, I think in the Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge itself, what we're seeing is that because we're able to think about this from a big infrastructure point of view, that the industries that operate in that region can start to plan for utilising that infrastructure. Because obviously for most companies, thinking about designing pipeline routings and so on would be way beyond their capabilities and budgets. So I think what it means is that we can accelerate the thinking in the cluster around how to use hydrogens. And lots of people are talking about it when people go to industry events, they talk to other people that are planning to do this. And I think that really creates a lot of confidence that this is actually doable rather than just some crazy idea from somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and that confidence, I guess, is I guess coming from the sort of government approval of these projects and indeed support. How do you think that industries feel? They feel like they're being supported in this energy transition and actually around, I guess, the wider role of government as a key facilitator.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think government is playing a really important role in encouraging action around switching to hydrogen. I suppose one of the problems is, it's not really possible to afford for everybody to change at once. And, what you see is that you can start to see people becoming enthusiastic about this idea and then not being successful in a competition. But ultimately we need all these industries to decarbonize, and their chance will come. It's just, I think, there is a really important aspect here of, we haven't done this before. We need to do some initial projects and try to learn from those and get the costs down for the future projects, which is so crucial. So it's really an important role of government in thinking through what the kind of level of investment at each stage needs to be. And obviously you end up with winners and losers, which is disappointing. But we need to keep our eye on the fact that, to get to net zero, all of our industries will need to decarbonise or close. So, there will be a lot more support coming to encourage people to look into new technologies and so on.
Yeah. So I guess winners and losers more the first priorities, and then the second priorities in terms of when it's happening. And in terms of, I guess, alleviating it, I guess the allocation of risk and some of the detail about what happens now. What does happen now? Is there just a greater uptake as sort of business models get hardened and finance gets deployed in terms of the next steps?
I think what we're starting to see is big hydrogen production projects moving to the next stage. So we've been funding the engineering designs, but they're starting to move into the construction phase, equipment being purchased and on site, as we speak. So I think there are really exciting times ahead, because people will be able to see these projects, being built and operating, and, we've obviously seen around the UK various demonstrations of the use of hydrogen at big scale in big manufacturing organisations as they start to get a feel for what the scale of the challenge is for them. So I think we'll learn a lot over the next very few years, and then it should be easier for industries that are not yet looking at this to actually understand the need to change.
Yeah. You mentioned skills before. Is there any sort of specific work that needs to be done around, I guess, encouraging, but also developing the skills, or encouraging more STEM graduates or people with indeed hydrogen degrees or
There is so much to do, and of course we all recognise that so many young people want to work in the transition to a green economy, but don't necessarily recognise that industry is fully on board with this, and that there are some fantastic opportunities available in the industry in these new jobs that are coming along. And so that's a bit of a gap really of perception, and I think industry is working quite hard to close that gap, but there's such a long way to go. And we are seeing some of the big industries we work with working in their communities, spending much more time in schools, spending much more focus on getting apprenticeships underway, local innovation centres, all kinds of stuff coming along. It's great to see, but, we all know it isn't enough, and we need a lot more of that.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see indeed. I think the UK sometimes gets a little bit maligned for its position, I guess, in the energy transition. It is one of the countries, I think, with over 2% of its GDP being spent on the energy transition, which is certainly above the global average of 1.7, and by comparison, the US is only at sort of 1.1. The outstanding leader globally is China at sort of 3.2% of their GDP. So, but yeah, the UK is certainly taking it seriously. There is activity, and we look forward to seeing that grow as it will surely has to. So it's been great to chat to you, Bryony. We look forward to meeting you face to face in London. As I mentioned, you'll be one of the many expert speakers at the World Hydrogen UK event, which is I think 9th to 11th of April. So many thanks and stay safe. And we look forward to meeting you face to face.
Thank you.
Cheers. Take care. Bye bye.